I've had this idea for a couple months now, and I finally wanted to get started on the first episode of what is essentially talking watches with some of my friends, some people that I know that just like watches. And right on cue, we got our first guest of the day pulling up. Oh shit. All right, who the hell are you?
I am Britton, and I am one of Caden's friends. And today we're reviewing my watches that I have purchased. Some have purchased, some have been given.
Okay, so the idea that I've had for about a couple months now is essentially to bring on friends, people that I know that like watches, and just have them kind of talk the stories about watches. One of the first things that really got me into watches was the mechanics and the movement and how they work. As it currently sits, the reason why I'm so obsessed with watches is just the community and the people around watches, and oftentimes the stories that those specific watches have. So, with that being said, why are you, Britton, into watches?
So I've always had watches, and I've never been into them as much as I am now, but this was actually my first watch that I ever got. It was a Christmas present from my mother, and it is a very good Casio. It is a Wave Scepter. I wore this thing all the time. I wore it to school, I wore it to hang out with friends. Every single thing that I did, I was in this watch. And ever since then, I was just been like, watches are just fun.
So I can see that this is not running.
It is not currently running. I have had that watch in my drawer for a long time, but I have kept it.
But this is like the first.
This is the first watch.
I haven't even actually seen this yet, so that's very interesting. It has like a similar little sub-dial thing like my favorite G-Shock 6900 has, and like an interesting like plastic texture on the dial. Have you done anything in this watch?
Ever since I was a kid, I've done everything in that watch. I've elementary kid with a watch, just did normal kid things like playing on the playground and stuff. But yeah, that's my first watch. But my watch obsession didn't really start until probably 2 years ago when we went to our local AD and we found a really cool guy there that was really enthusiastic about all of these mechanical, really cool watches. And
shout out Justin.
Shout out Justin.
Shout out my boy Justin.
I credit him for being the reason why I fully got into more luxury watches or automatic watches, mechanical watches. This was the first. This is what started it all. I mean, just wearing watches in general, this is what started it.
So that one was obviously your first watch, but what else did you bring? What watches have we got?
Here we have my first watch that I kind of got myself. So this here is a little tiny baby Casio, and I kind of mixed up the strap here with the little white strap, so it's kind of like just a Mod Podge watch at this point. But the story behind this one is when I was probably about 10, I found it at my local swimming pool at the bottom of the deep end, and I swam down and I grabbed it, and then I took it to the front and I was like, hey, if nobody comes and picks this up, then I want it. So about a week later, I came back and I picked it up, and probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I just started wearing it like every single day. So this has been basically my daily driver for the longest time, and it is super solid. I've never changed the batteries on it since I've found it. I've never cleaned it or anything. It will not die. It's just a little tank.
For years, you're saying this thing has just been ticking away.
Yes.
For centuries.
Yes. The only change that I've made is I recently purchased a white cased version of the same watch. So all I've done is I just swapped the straps here and kind of made them like a little panda duo, if you will. One of my favorite Casios for sure. They're super solid. So
far we've seen Casio exclusively. Would you say Casio is like one of your favorite brands? How would you say you feel about Casio?
They're cheap, they're robust, they always just work. They're quartz, so they're always accurate. I do a lot of hiking, a lot of swimming, motorcycling, everything. And honestly, everything you throw at these little tiny baby cheap watches, they just can handle. That's why I like them, because you don't really have to worry about anything breaking or anything like that. I think they're awesome little watches.
Casio is awesome. I know for me, my first watch was a G-Shock Square, which I know that we have one of these here in front of us. The G-Shock Square is what I would say is like the best watch that you can have. And knowing you, I know that you love the G-Shock Square, which I see in front of us. So why do you have this G-Shock Square within your collection?
This is my grow a watch for my collection. So we'll talk about it later, but I've had a Speedmaster, I've had an Explorer 36, but this one's my favorite. So I've since parted with a lot of those watches because it was associated with a bad time in my life. But this guy actually got me this watch when I was down in the dirt. I was all sad. He got me this watch, and this has been my favorite watch I think I've ever owned. I go to the gym a lot, and so the fact that it syncs up with it's the radio, right? It syncs up with the radio. Multiband 6, it syncs up, and it just is always accurate. And so I know exactly when the gym's closing because I like to go there at night.
Not to get into too much into detail about the time that this watch was purchased, but this was purchased for the homie Britton because he was, as he said, down in the dirt. So we've looked at a lot of quartz watches, specifically all being Casio. Do you buy anything other than Casio? Like what else have you got within your collection that is fun?
So as we mentioned earlier, we have a very good friend. His name is Justin, and he used to work at one of our local ADs. And I got a call from him, and he was telling me that they have a Pelos 39. I wanted one of these for a very long time. Finally, he called me. He was like, "Hey, I can hook you up with one of these." And I was like, "Okay." So we rushed down, and he hooked it up, picked this guy up. This is probably one of my favorite automatic watches that I've ever owned. I love titanium watches because I go hiking all the time. I'm always doing something. I don't really like to have something big and bulky on my wrist. I just like to just kind of feel free. And titanium is really just amazing because it's super light. You don't have to worry about it clanking around or being heavy on your wrist. This is just a perfect little diver for me.
This is not actually the first time that this watch has been featured on the channel. If you look back to a couple weeks, a month ago, whenever it was that I made the video on the Pelos 39, this is that very Pelos 39. This is that very homie who has let me use his watches in the past. And the Pelos is just a super solid dive watch. In that video, I know my complaint about it was that I don't like how it feels on the wrist. Am I crazy, or why do you love titanium?
I mean, you're not crazy. I've heard multiple people talk about how titanium is potentially more sticky than steel, but I've never encountered that issue where it being more sticky. I never felt like it's too sticky, but I think it's perfect. It's super lightweight. I love the color. The color is like a very nice gunmetal gray color, and it just doesn't really stand out too much like a lot of other divers do.
So looking in the watch box, I see a couples that are not watches that I would typically associate with you or even like watch guys wearing. What are those watches you got in that case?
Here we have a couple of more sentimental pieces to me. So here are two fossils that my girlfriend actually got me. They're both chronographs and they're both quartz, and they're super solid. She got these for two of my birthdays, and so they're super sentimental, and they look really nice, and I love them. They're quartz, so they always run. They're always pretty accurate, and they look great. They're both kind of inspired by racing at Le Mans, and she knows that I love racing and cars and motorsports, so she got these for me, and I don't know, they're really fun watches to have in my collection, and they're just very sentimental to me.
Of course, we gotta make a return back to Casio land. I think one more Casio. What one is that?
I am a certified Casio lover. Casios are my favorite, and this one is pretty awesome. So this one's just kind of like a little analog digital watch that I bought from Walmart. It was 25 bucks, and I saw it and I was just dumbfounded on how cool it was. Got a little analog clock on the top left, subdial, and then a little kind of subdial with the seconds. It's just kind of a fun little Casio. This one doesn't get too much wrist time, but it's just fun to have.
Yeah, I almost feel like this looks like the smaller plastic version of kind of like that Casio Royale, where it's got those multiple sections on the face or the display of the watch with like the actual analog time and then the digital time. And I remember when these came out, these were kind of like, even for non-watch people, like kind of cool watches to have. So last but certainly not least, we have another watch that is very familiar to me. What is this final watch that we have here?
This final watch. So earlier I mentioned how much I love titanium because titanium is so good, and this one is no exception. This is a Hamilton Khaki Field Titanium. So it's a little field watch. This thing has been thoroughly handed down through the homies. So
this watch may be familiar because this was my watch. What do you like about this watch? Why do you have it?
well, as I mentioned, I love titanium watches for the weight. I really don't like heavy watches just because I don't like to feel constrained by having something heavy on my wrist while I'm like hiking or running or something. And so I just really only wanted to stick with titanium for now. But right now I have it on this spring-made strap. So it's just a single pass strap that's made by a guy here in Utah, and it's just super comfortable to wear. It's really small, so it fits well on my wrist. The ETA inside is really accurate. I've taken this all over. I've taken this on camping trips, hiking, swimming, whatever. This watch just handles whatever you throw at it. Super fun. This is the only watch in my collection that has a open case back as well. So for anybody who's like, oh, what watch do you have or whatever, you can kind of show them the internals and the mechanism of the watch, and just kind of a little party trick. It's not really something that super matters, but it's fun to have.
So that's everything we got on the table, but I know that you used to have some pretty big hitter watches in your collection that are no longer here. What are those watches, and kind of what's the story with those watches that are not kind of pictured here?
I was engaged at one point and I wanted a wedding watch, and so one of the watches that I decided to be my wedding watch was a 1863 Speedmaster, so the Sapphire Sandwich, and that was such an awesome watch. I bought it off of eBay, and I bought it without a strap, and then I took it to my friend and he got me a brand new Speedmaster bracelet for it with a micro adjust, and it was amazing. Like, that's the only watch that I really truly like miss so much, and I wish I didn't sell. The next watch that I purchased after that was a 124-270 Rolex Explorer 36 millimeter, and that watch was amazing. Kind of pissed me off low-key because of after having the Speedmaster and having the simple adjustment of the clasp, because like I work in a warehouse and my wrist is always kind of growing and shrinking all the time, so I didn't want to like it just the micro adjust wasn't super great. So that's one thing that led to me kind of selling it, other than the fact that I was just going through some hard times in my life. But those are the two kind of main heavy hitters that I've had. The next was a Vulcan Cricket, which was super fun. That was I think it was from the 70s. It was very old and kind of clanky, and so I didn't love that. I didn't feel like I can like do anything in it. I just felt like it was gonna break.
So like the Pelagos 39, that Explorer was also featured on this channel. So looking back at my videos, you can see those Explorer 2 videos. That was his watch. So I don't think it's on this table, but what was your first automatic watch that you had?
First ever automatic watch was a Seiko 5 Sports. It's just a little tiny diver that has an NH35 movement in it, and that was a super fun watch. Just had a little NATO strap.
So of the watches on this table, what one gets the most wrist time within all these watches?
Well, this guy here is my favorite watch that I own and have ever owned. This little G-Shock here. This is my favorite by far. I go hiking, swimming, kayaking, whatever, motorcycle riding in this. This thing is amazing. This is a little tank. It's always accurate. I don't know. Everybody hates on the black display, but I am the #1 black display lover. He hates it, but I love it. This is amazing.
I asked this question damn well knowing the answer to this, because I love when the homies are wearing cool watches, and I always joke that he never wears any cool watches, and it's a curse that I caused because I got this watch for him.
This is so stealth, and it just always looks cool and always looks good in my opinion. It just looks tough.
Black display sucks. Black display is not the move.
That's enough about me. I see you have a nice orange strap there. Is that new?
So today, on my wrist, recently been wearing this watch a lot. This is the Jack Mason Pursuit Pilot. And pictured here today, I have been loving this Artem Hydroflex strap that I've been pairing with this watch. Specifically this orange color. I have been begging Artem to make this color for so long, because if you know me, orange is my favorite color. And so they finally made it. I finally got it. My favorite color, favorite strap. Just a great watch. So I think we've talked about damn near everything. I really hope that this video kind of came off as just a simple kind of talking watches type video. I suppose my goal with doing this video, and in the future any type of videos like this, is just to talk about the stories behind watches and kind of why people have watches. I don't know about you, but like for me, that's what makes watches interesting. So one final question as the very end of this video is wrapping. Where do you see your collection going, or kind of what pieces do you really want in the future, and how do you see your collection growing or changing in the future?
I think acquiring more watches that are just interesting. I've really been kind of obsessed with micro brands lately, just because they're unique little pieces that you don't see all that often. Most of the ones that I want have kind of crazy dials or have some weird quirk about them. It's really what I love in watches, is watches that aren't just kind of plain and bland, something that has kind of a flair to it or something that's unique about that particular watch.
Meanwhile, every watch on the table is a black dial, titanium, or a Casio. Thanks for coming on. Good luck getting home, and peace out.